Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. So today I will do a comparison of the three cars that I currently own. It's the Honda Civic Type R, the Lotus Exige, and the Porsche 992 GT3. I will compare their steering wheels, so how they feel in my hands, their size, and also the seating position and their seats, how different are they, and also the steering feel when you are driving. So come along and see the differences between these cars. Looking at the seats and also the seating position of the Lotus Exige. So this is a full carbon bucket seat. It's a fixed carbon bucket seat. It's very thin and very light. Very amazing. But they are quite comfortable, surprisingly. The padding is actually quite soft and they're contour to the shape of your body, so that's really good. I've taken this on longer trips and they are actually okay. And obviously this is a manual transmission car. So we have 3 pedals. They are in aluminium, looks really good. The seating position of the Exige is very low. It's very amazing. It's almost like a supercar feel to it. Your butt is almost on the floor of the car, basically. Measuring the edge of the seat to the floor of the car, it's only about 10 centimeters. One difference of these Lotus bucket seats compared to the ones in the Porsche GT3 is that the backrest has a bit of an angle. It's less straight than the ones in the GT3, so they feel a bit more comfortable. And also if you are driving on the track, that just leaves a bit more room for your helmet. One downside to the very low sitting position is it's harder to get in and out because the opening of the Exige is not that large and it has a very tall sill. So getting in and out is, takes a bit of practice. Looking at the steering wheel of the Lotus Exige, it's got a Alcantara lining. So it's very nice to touch and it's almost fully rounded. It has a very small flat bottom right here, so it makes it easier to get in and out because, again, as I said, it's already difficult enough with the small opening, so having a small flat bottom here makes it a little bit more easier to get in and out, so that's a good thing. Looking at the 6-point and 9 o'clock points where your hands are, I really like the shape of these steering wheel molding. You have a dent right here, so it fits your palm really well. And also at the back, there is a large protrusion where your fingers hold the steering wheel. So the steering of the Exige actually is molded to your hand really well. When I'm driving this, sometimes I feel like my hands are glued to the steering wheel. It's a very nice feeling. The steering column of the Lotus Exige is fixed, so there's no adjustment to the steering. So in terms of size, from the right to the left is about 32 centimeters in diameter. So it's actually a very small steering wheel. The small size of the steering wheel of the Exige actually suits the character of the car, I think, because the Exige is a very small vehicle and also the interior is actually very compact. So with the small steering, almost feels like you are driving a go-kart. The distance from the edge of the steering to the middle of the gear lever is about 14 centimeters. It's a very short distance. So when you are driving, it's really quick to shift and move back to the steering wheel. The clutch is actually quite heavy in the Exige, but the gear shifting action is actually very mechanical. You can hear the clicking sound of the gear shifting, and you can see the mechanism. It's amazing. I really like it. There are no buttons on the steering wheel. It's just purely for driving. So when you're driving hard, your hand will not touch any of the buttons, which can be a good thing when you are in a machine like this, which is designed purely for driving. And you have a digital dash in front of you. This is only present in the final edition of the Exiges and the Elises. Makes these final edition cars a bit more modern. And over here we have the start-stop button of the engine, and also different modes and the lighting. Looking at the seating of the GT3, it's a full carbon fiber bucket seat. It's a fixed bucket seat, so you cannot change the angle of the backrest. The only adjustment you can do is front and back, obviously, and up and down through this button right here. So you can go up, you can go all the way down to the lowest position. It's a very nice looking bucket seat, and they are actually not that bad in terms of comfort. I've driven it on long journeys and they seem alright. The only complaint I might have with this bucket seat is the backrest. The angle of it is actually quite straight. So compared to the Exige, where the Exige has a bit more angle, the GT3 is actually very straight up. So while you are driving on track, especially with the helmet on, you sometimes have to tilt your head forward to allow room for, the thickness of the helmet. But daily driving wise, it's okay. And in terms of driving position, it's also quite low, but I would say it's not as low as the Exige. The Exige feels like you are almost sitting on the ground. So as you can see from the floor to the lowest position with the seat edge is around 18.5 centimeters to 19 centimeters ish. The bolstering of these bucket seats are very amazing. They are quite high on the side, so they hold you in place really well. Feels like you are sort of glued to the car, especially with the 3-point harness. When you tighten them up, you are actually strapped to the seat, and there are quite a bit of details as well. You've got this perforation, and I think the inside, these inserts, you can remove them and actually change them to a different fabric if you want to. There are a lot of companies that's doing this at the moment. So sitting inside the GT3, looking at the steering wheel, it's a fully rounded steering wheel. So that's quite nice. It's multifunctional. So on the left hand side, we have voice control, volume, and track. This is a customizable button right here. On the right hand side, this scroll button actually controls the multi-screen on the right hand side on the dash. And this is phone pickup, and this is going backwards. This is for the driving modes. So it's again very easy to maneuver. So from the top to the bottom, it's about 35.5 centimeters. So it's a bit larger than the Exige. So we have two pedals here. This is equipped with the PDK. So flappy pedal on the left and the right. And in terms of the holding area on the 6 and 9 o'clock positions, there is a dent right here. So seems like when you're holding it like this, there's always a gap between your palm and the steering wheel. And on the back of the steering wheel as well, there is no protrusion over here. So when you're holding it, sometimes this can be, less molded to your hand compared to the Exige. But if you hold it like this, then it's quite molded. This dented area kind of fits your thumb very well. So it's quite a, I don't know, I wouldn't say weird, but it's a different design from what I'm used to. In terms of the gauge cluster, let's turn it on. The gauge cluster is very clear, but when you are driving, it's really hard to see the very left and very right gauges. You almost mostly see the central 3 circles right here. But I like the tech, the rev counter in the center. It's physical, it looks very nice, and revs up really quickly because of the engine speed. So in terms of distance, it's about 17 centimeters from the steering side of the steering wheel to the center of the gear lever. So you push it to the right, you can shift it up and down like this. It's again very close to the steering wheel, so when you're shifting, moving back, so when you're shifting, it's always very close, so your hand doesn't have to leave the steering wheel for very long. So let's look at the Type R. Let's look at the seating first. You can see this is a very nice looking bucket seat. It's lined fully in red Alcantara. Looks very great with the Type R logo at the headrest. It's fully adjustable, so you can move it front and back, obviously up and down with this lever, and you can incline the backrest with this lever right here. So this is not a fixed position, rigid bucket seat. So I would imagine this would be heavier than the ones in the Exige and also the 911 GT3. But this is more comfortable though. It has a much more softer padding, and also the bolstering, they are very nice and comfortable and very supportive as well. And the details are really nice too. You can see the perforation on the seating and on the back as well. So let's look at the height of the seating. It's now adjusted to the lowest position, and to the edge of the seat it's about 26 centimeters. Sitting inside the Type R, you can see the steering wheel is fully lined in Alcantara. So all 3 wheels of the GT3, the Exige, and the Type R, they are all lined in Alcantara. And in terms of the quality of the suede, they feel the same. They are all very nicely bolstered. You can see the steering wheel is fully round. It's a multifunctional steering wheel. So on the left-hand side, we have the volume, up and down, the track, voice control, and there is a scroll button to control the dash on the left-hand side, the screen on the left for multimedia. And on the right-hand side, we have cruise control, settings, and also this is to control the right-hand side. So let's have a look at the size of the steering wheel. So from top to bottom, it's about 37 centimeters in diameter. So let's have a look at the distance from the gear lever to the edge of the steering wheel. It's about 21 centimeters. The steering column of the Civic Type R is fully adjustable. Pull this lever here, can move it in and out, up and down. So it's very easy to find a good seating position no matter your height. In terms of how it holds, I think the Type R steering wheel is very nice. Honestly, I would prefer this steering wheel compared to the one in the GT3, because I feel this is much nicer to hold, and also it's more molded to your hand. And in terms of thickness, it's just perfect. I feel the one in the GT3 is a little bit thin for my liking. And in terms of the shape, you can see there's a dent right here, so your thumb can be molded to the steering wheel. And also there is a protrusion at the back, so when you're holding it, it's molded to your palm. So if I'm to rate the steering wheel, I would actually rate Exige first in terms of how it feels in your hand, and then the Type R second, and the GT3 third. The GT3 has an electrically assisted rack. The steering feel is quite good. It gives you feedback from the road. The imperfections, also the different camber, the steering feel will have a different feedback, just telling you what's going on with the front wheels. In terms of turning in, the steering is actually quite sharp. It's quite a direct and very sharp steering. This is also due to the double wishbone suspension in the front. Makes the steering feel very quick. So every time when you change your direction, the car moves instantly. So it feels like the steering is really quick. Makes the car feel very agile and very planted to the road. The steering could feel quite busy sometimes, but I think this is a good thing for the GT3 because it's a sports car. It's supposed to feel urgent, less relaxed. So I think having this type of steering suits the character of the car. The steering is generally quite light. It's not a very heavy steering. So if you want to go on longer trips or you're driving this as a daily, you don't feel very tiresome driving this car. The Honda Civic Type R also has a electrically assisted steering rack. The steering feel is actually very similar to the GT3, if not better. This is very surprising to me because their price range is actually very different. The GT3 is a much more expensive car than the Type R. So just a credit to the Type R how good this car is as a sports car. The steering feel is very direct. Also, it's very quick in terms of direction change. Feels, again, very similar to the GT3. The steering is also quite light, and one thing different from the GT3 is it's less busy. It doesn't follow the imperfections of the road as much. So it's a better daily driver in terms of drivability every day. It feels a bit more comfortable than the GT3. The steering feel of the Lotus Exige is in a league of its own. It's a totally different sensation compared to the GT3 and the Civic Type R. It's a very organic set of steering wheel. It has no assist whatsoever, so you feel everything, every detail, every camber change on the road. And the steering loads up really nicely when you're turning into a corner, giving you loads of information of how much grip you have on the front tires. And because of the small size of the steering wheel and also the double wishbone suspension in the front, the steering feels very quick and very agile. And also the car is quite light, so at speed, the direction change is second to none. But the downside to this is it's a car that tramlines quite heavily. It follows the imperfection of the road a lot. So it's a car that you can't really relax in. You have to be always on point, paying attention to the steering, otherwise the car will get away from you. And because there's no power assist at all, it can feel very heavy when the car is stationary. When you are trying to do a 3-point turn or doing a reverse from standstill, the steering can get really heavy. So this is definitely not a car for every day. It's only meant to be a toy, a track toy, or a weekend car. So it was interesting to compare these three cars. So from my own point of view and also from my ownership experience, I find the Exige has the best steering feel and also the best steering comfort when I hold the steering wheel. I think in terms of steering feel, the Type R and the GT3 are pretty much on par, and they have plenty of feel, but just not as much as the Exige. In terms of the comfort of the steering wheel, I think Exige comes first because it's just more molded to my hands, and the smaller steering wheel feels more agile. The second would be the Type R. I think the Type R, in terms of the thickness of the steering wheel, I like it a bit more. And again, it's suited to my hands better. It's surprisingly that the GT3 comes in third, because the GT3, the steering wheel is a bit too thin for my liking. And also on the 6 and 9 o'clock points, when I hold it, it just feels a little bit hollow compared to the Exige and the Type R. In terms of sitting position, I think, again, the Exige is the best. It's the lowest, and also your leg is able to stretch out pretty horizontally, so it feels like you're driving a supercar. The second would be the GT3. It's got a very nice bucket seat. The sitting position is low enough. The third is the Type R, which the sitting position is the highest, but the Type R is actually the most comfortable. So I hope you like this review. Please leave any comments you have in the comment section below. Please subscribe and also hit that like button if you could. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye.